another Doctor Who book review. It's been a while because I've been doing a lot of different things that's required a lot of time, meaning that I've not really had much time to relax and actually chill out and read a book. However, today I'm going to be continuing my look at the Doctor Who 2018 target novel range by taking a look at the 50th anniversary special, The Day of the Doctor, written and novelised by Steven Moffat. Now, this is going to be quite an interesting review because I've not really revisited The Day of the Doctor since its actual release. I think that I did an episode review of it back in the early days of my channel, and yeah, it wasn't exactly one of the best episode reviews in the world, probably, from what I can recall. So it's going to be interesting to go back to see the 50th anniversary, because there's no denying, from a new series perspective, this is a sort of episode of Doctor Who that is seen as a very good one. However, from the classic series fan perspective, and sort of the Big Finish fan as well, it's seen as more of a tribute to the new series as opposed to Doctor Who as a 50th anniversary as a whole. Now, there's no denying Steven Moffat had an absolutely massive job for the 50th anniversary, and I don't think you could actually cover the 50 years of Doctor Who within 2 hours. It couldn't really give it justice, let alone how long the running time of The Day of the Doctor was. I think, if anything, to actually give the 50th anniversary some justice, it should have been a full series worth of story for like a whole 13 episodes with one plot running throughout, maybe an episode dedicated to certain Doctors or something like that, fully giving time to actually take a look at the characters. However, we obviously didn't get that because of circumstances with Doctor Who at the time, so we're left with this unusual thing, The Day of the Doctor. However, this one is even more unusual than the TV one, which I'm going to get onto in this review. First off, and as always, in the description below, I will be leaving the link to go buy this release from the many other websites that this is being sold on. There is Amazon. It's currently selling this physical paper version here. Retail price is £6.99, however, it's currently on Amazon for £6.50. Then you can also get the audiobook version. If you've not started your trial of Audible, you can in fact get it for free, so that's good. Or you can get the audio CD version for £25, or if you're a digital fanatic, you can get the Kindle edition. However, as with the majority of target novel videos that I've done so far, if you're a Doctor Who fan, then I recommend above all actually getting the physical edition of this book, because I think half of the actual reasoning of getting these books is down to the lovely cover art and down to the way that they've been stylized to make it look like the retro target novel series. Yeah, this is a really lovely thing. Even if you don't read them, then I definitely recommend just getting it to look at, because they're a great addition to the collection. I guess to start off this video, much like with the other target novel reviews, I'll sort of go into a little bit of a product review to take a look at this in a little bit closer detail. Now, taking a look at the actual book itself, once again we are following exactly the same design as the other target novels in the range, which is rather nice and visually pleasing. So we have the Doctor Who logo at the very top in the rather nice glossy bronze format. Then we have The Day of the Doctor, Steven Moffat, along the target logo at the very top. The whole actual book itself is in kind of this cream colour, which is very nice. And then of course we get the really nice illustration there at the very bottom. Once again done by Anthony Dry, that is rather impressive. So we get the War Doctor, the 11th Doctor and the 10th Doctor there. Considering there is a few other Doctors in this release, it may be nice to have a few of the other incarnations on there as well. Maybe the Night of the Doctor, 8th Doctor might have been quite a nice addition, considering he's at the very start of this book. And then you have the Daleks at the side there, once again in sort of your Dalek Invasion of Earth kind of format, with a few rather unusual colours on there. Even that one in the corner that looks a little bit like a Peter Cushing movie Dalek, which I've only just realised literally right now. So yeah, that's a rather nice little Easter egg thrown in there. Then we have a Zygon once again from the actual TV series, and then we have a few more sort of comic kind of blur colours along the side, with a few explosions and stars going around the side. And yeah, I really do like the way that's been done. It is rather visually pleasing. And then of course on the spine of the book we get the Doctor Who logo, Day of the Doctor, Steven Moffat and the BBC books once again. And then on the back we do get a quote about the Doctor himself, and then we also get a little bit of a smaller image of the cover, along with a write-up about the story, and then a few details about the story itself, along with the different people that play the different Doctors. And then we also have the company information there at the bottom, along with the recommended retail price being £6.99. The actual format of the text is rather small, actually. I do believe it is a little bit smaller than your other target novels. I'm just going to check now. I'm going to compare to the Rose one. Yeah, the Rose one did seem to be, as you can see, a lot more of a bigger font, because this is a little bit of a shorter story. So this one is longer in pages and as well smaller in text formats. Yeah, it is quite a longer book to read. We have the contents here at the very front, which, as you can see, because it's a Steven Moffat story, of the chapters aren't in order. We go from 8 to 11 to 1 to 10 to 12 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 13, and we completely miss out 9, because hey, we're expecting anything different from a Steven Moffat story. A really nice little inclusion at the front is in memory of Sir John Hurt, who saved the day, which I think is a really nice little inclusion. And then at the very back of the book we also get Help Me, with a lot of different tallies on there, which if you read the book you'll in fact know what all of that is about. And I do like the way that all of the chapters are in fact named pretty much after the Doctor. So the ones that are in sort of the quotations of the Doctor, sort of different incarnations from his perspective, or sort of called The Night of the Doctor, The Flight of the Doctor, The War of the Doctor, and so on, which is a rather nice little thing. So yeah,
that's it for the actual book itself. Overall, very nice, and I recommend picking up this format more than the other versions because it's just a very nice physical book to add to the collection. And to be honest, no matter what with digital technology, you can't beat a decent book.
That's really it for the physical book itself. Now taking a look at the actual story, and it's one of those episodes that I think when it comes to it, you need to sort of see the TV episode first and then have your own opinion of that, because I think that if you go into this story, if you hate The Day of the Doctor, then you're going to probably not necessarily like this book release. If you like The Day of the Doctor, then probably you will like this release because it's essentially the same story recreated again. However, it's quite clear that Steven Moffat didn't get the memo of what a target novel book is. As stated in an interview that he did, I believe, for the official Doctor Who YouTube channel with Russell T Davies, it was very obvious that he didn't understand the format because he got the Rose target novel from Russell and he was incredibly surprised by it, and I think he said something like, oh, so that's how you do it, within the actual interview that he did. So yeah, it was very clear that he wasn't really going off a certain design for this, meaning that this Doctor Who story takes a little bit of a different format in the shape of the Doctor Papers, which is basically some write-ups of what the Doctor has sort of witnessed over the episode, and they're all pieced together and they're presented by this person in kind of a lecture style of format. And after every single chapter, you basically get the lecturer sort of educating his students on a certain area, and we don't really know the identity of this person until the very end. However, if you know The Day of the Doctor and sort of what happens in that story, you no doubt will be able to guess actually who that person is. It's not exactly a big reveal at the very end. I think it is very obvious. But this story, and one thing that I probably did mention when I'm taking a look at this book in physical format, is the chapters are completely out of order because it is a Steven Moffat story, and you can't of course go in a normal format like a normal book would actually be in, because hey, Steven Moffat likes to overcomplicate things, and this story is in a completely different order. You get, say, chapter 8 first. We start with the Night of the Doctor, which I think is a really nice addition, something of which many people actually wish was in the actual story itself, meaning that we would have had Paul McGann within the actual 50th anniversary. However, I kind of disagree with it, because I think if people thought that the Paul McGann was actually within the 50th anniversary, they probably would have thought, well, why don't we just have him for the whole story and not have the War Doctor in there in the first place, which is sort of a questionable idea really anyway. But I think that is a nice inclusion to have the 8th Doctor in there at the very start. It's a nice way to open the book, and then we go into the different perspectives of the different Doctors. I think that we start off with the 11th Doctor, then we go back in time to the 10th Doctor, and then we have the perspective of the War Doctor as well. And I must say, this book actually gives me a lot more respect for certain characters, especially the War Doctor, because unlike an actual TV story, you basically get into the mind of one, the actual characters, but more importantly, to the person that is actually writing this book. The person that quite obviously thinks that he is very intelligent, very clever, meaning that he has to be self-explanatory with what he's doing, because he has absolutely no visuals to rely on, meaning that you really get introduced to all of the thoughts of the characters at that time. And I must admit, I thought Day of the Doctor was a lot more clearer after reading this book. I felt like I understood the themes a little bit more, and I understood what Moffat was actually wanting to achieve, and that is something that isn't actually present within the TV story itself. But that said, at the same time, it still does have exactly the same flaws within the actual TV series, because it necessarily doesn't celebrate the 50 years of Doctor Who, it celebrates the new series and sort of an end for the Time War, and it brings in this new incarnation. It's quite obviously going for a struggle, but what I do really like is the way that we actually have the stuff from the War Doctor's perspective, where we see him learning things of the later versions of the Doctor, and actually we go into his mind and we see what he thinks of them, how they're sort of very immature, and then by the very end he realises that it's kind of just like that because they're covering up their past and the experiences that he has had in his incarnation. I think it will be fair to say that this episode has had a little bit of negative press from people that have read the book, especially after reading the two that I've read already, Christmas Invasion and Rose, because those follow and are very reliable to the target novel series. They are pretty much the episode novelised in story format. This one goes completely against that, as I say, and basically does its own thing. It's like a Doctor Who story of a novelised TV episode. It's like a Virgin novel, for example, from the 7th Doctor era or something like that. It doesn't feel like a target novel, so for that reason, I am a little bit against this book, I must admit. I feel that it is a lot more complex than it should be for a target novel book. It's also a lot longer than a normal target novel book. I believe it's around 300 pages long, or 232. It feels like 300 pages long, and that said, it actually feels like 400, because the format is actually quite awkward to start with. I think that if you're somebody that is more used to experimental books and stories that are essentially written within letters to people, I think that you would enjoy this book a little bit more. However, if you're you're more used to a normal narrative book format that actually has sort of certain characters and the story is from one person's perspective, then I think that this is a book that you will probably not click with too well, because I must admit it is quite a hard format to get into to start with, and it does take a lot of time getting used to. And I must admit as well, unlike The Christmas Invasion and unlike Rose, I literally read both of those within a week from what I can recall, because I was hooked by the story, I was hooked by the characters, and the way that it was written was really nice and entertaining, and you wanted to read on. This story did feel a little bit like a chore. But that also said, I can't exactly think of any other way you could actually present the Doctor, and let alone any other Steven Moffat story, because they are very complex episodes. They all have loose little threads that are intertwined together, and essentially, if this book was written in the Rose format, you would actually have sort of scenes that just said, the Doctor said to the Doctor, the other Doctor turned to the other Doctor, then said this, the Doctor frowned, then the other Doctor did this. Because you have three Doctors within one scene, it's just going to be the Doctor said, the Doctor said, the Doctor said constantly. So I understand where Moffat's coming from with this book, but at the same time, it is a little bit jarring, but I do still like some of the elements that Steven Moffat has thrown in. As I say, actually getting into the personalities of the different characters is a little bit of a bonus. This episode throws in a few Easter eggs in there as well, no doubt that a few of you have actually sort of seen floating around social media, and a few that I am going to address, because they are a little bit controversial. First one, the first and second Doctor were apparently colourblind, because hey, they were in black and white Doctor Who and stuff like that, kind of making it break the fourth wall to think that it's a TV show, because Moffat likes to do that. He kind of is irresistible when it comes to annoying little things that will nerves of the fans that are very obsessed with the show at the same time. I think there is just sort of a throwaway line. It didn't really throw me too much. I think it's just a thing of, oh, Moffat, yeah, you're doing something else that's kind of unnecessary. So yeah, that was a nice little Easter egg, I guess. At the same time, we did also have a few other references. The Peter Cushing movies are now, according to this book, technically canon, because the Peter Cushing movies are in fact movies that exist within the Doctor Who universe, and basically a movie company was inspired by the Doctor's actions throughout his different adventures, probably within the first Doctor era, and then they've gone and made movie representations of those stories. And there is a moment in the Black Archive where the 10th Doctor and the 11th Doctor actually sit down and watch the Peter Cushing movies together, which it just felt a little bit up itself, really. I must admit, it feels a little bit pretentious, which is kind of this whole book. It feels like it's going, look how clever I am, look how intelligent I am, and it just feels like it's being a little bit egotistical. But that said, I think that that kind of suits this story once again, because it is one of those episodes that actually suits that. And then we lead on to the canonicity of this story, because of course the Day of the Doctor in the TV show is canon, meaning that this is technically canon as well, but you can't really have the same story twice in the same canon, unless you kind of count episodes such as Sharda. Basically the whole canon is confusing, and I'm not going to bother getting into it too much, but the way that I see the target novels is basically another presentation of the story within the TV series itself. So the TV story is always the first-hand source of that episode, and then the target novel is basically the retelling of that story. So essentially this target novel can do absolutely anything it wants, because it's not technically confirmed in the first place, meaning all the throwaway lines like Monochrome, Vision, Peter Cushing, maybe the odd references to a few other Doctors that we don't see within the TV story itself, I think are just in this book for nice little Easter eggs, really. And it is interesting, something that I do agree with what Moffat said, is the majority of the scenes that you'd think, wow, this is amazing in The Day of the Doctor, are scenes that actually aren't present in this book, such as No Sir All 13. That isn't even mentioned in this book. That scene where all the TARDISes come together are, however, it's a lot more extended, and what I do like to see is some of the Doctors are actually given individual scenes. We have, so the 7th Doctor, I think, marching some children out of a school, the 1st Doctor, and doing something else in a hospital or something like that, sort of saving different people, and you really do feel like it is a universal story. And at the same time, I think it has a few throwaway references as well to Doctors from the other universe. So I kind of like to believe that maybe David Warner's Unbound Doctor was in there as well. But I think at the same time, it would have just been nice, and I feel like it should have happened, to have the 9th Doctor in this. I feel like maybe having a scene where the War Doctor went back to the barn without the other Doctors being there, maybe before sort of the other Doctors arrived to help him in the barn, and we just had the War Doctor confronting the 9th Doctor, and they have a little conversation, because anything can happen within the book format. So I do think that that was a little bit of a missed opportunity that could have been took. And that said as well, it may be nice to give the 8th Doctor a little bit more screen time as well, maybe having the War Doctor going and seeing his previous incarnation novelization, say in The Night of the Doctor, and saying how he regenerated and things like that. But yeah, I think that could have been an opportunity taken, and also maybe a few things going into the classic series, maybe bringing the Fourth Doctor, the actual Fourth Doctor, in there as well, and of course the Curator may or may not have a few additional scenes throughout this story as well, as you can probably guess. And the very last page of this story actually has a little bit of a, not cliffhanger exactly, but once again an Easter egg, maybe referencing a certain bit of Doctor Who. That I think that Moffat has done some nice changes to the story, but at the same time, I think for the 50th anniversary special, this job and this book had a very big task, and one of which that it is virtually impossible to fulfill. But that said, in the target novel format, it's a nice read. It's just overly complex for the target novels. I miss the simplicity, and yeah, so I think that if you're looking for a book for the target novels to start on, I don't recommend this one. However, if you're looking for a more experimental story, or maybe wanting the Day of the Doctor to be given a little bit more justice, then this might be a book for you. But that said, because I don't really like the Day of the Doctor as much in the first place, because it doesn't have the classic series references in there, for me, I would very much willingly accept An Adventure in Space and Time as the 50th anniversary. Even though it's not happening within the canon of Doctor Who, I think that it's more representative of the 50 years of Doctor Who than anything. Same with Light at the End to sort of an extent as well, because you have the anniversary of the classic series with that, and then the anniversary of the new series in this one. So kind of all of them put together create the definitive 50th anniversary story. But that said, this episode has flaws because it went into it with flaws, therefore it's going to come out the other side naturally with flaws anyway, because it's impossible to remove those, because the Day of the Doctor is the Day of the Doctor. And I guess really that's it, because it's just a complex, confusing, but still quite fun read as well. Really it for the Day of the Doctor target novel by Steven Moffat. It's a little bit of a Marmite one, but my head kind of hurts now. But I guess on a lighter note, look at this lovely display that I've created out of the Big Chief Doctors with Christopher Eccleston sat there at the very bottom. Maybe should have brought the 12th Doctor in there as well, but hey. The War Doctor's lovely, isn't he? I do love John Hurt. That said, if you actually want to see some more really fun War Doctor stories that have a lot of talent behind them, then definitely check out the Big Finish ones, because that is a series that is very much worth listening to. But hey, go and watch those reviews if you are interested in those. And I guess that's it for this target novel review. Next up in the target novel series, I will be taking a look at Twice Upon a Time, that is the most recent new series Doctor Who story, featuring the end of the 12th Doctor and the return of the First Doctor, this time written by Paul Cornell. So I do have hope for this one, especially I want to see how they've novelised the First Doctor. That's going to be very interesting to see, and I assume that this returns back to the normal target novelisation format. I bloody well hope so, because I don't really want to go through another Day of the Doctor style story again. And then after that, we'll have probably the review of the City of Death, and then that's it for the target novels. I'm kind of liking going into these stories in a little bit more depth in an individual review each, because it really does let me have space to breathe and actually talk about the story and really sit down and actually say what I like and dislike about it, as opposed to giving a whole, say, 20-minute review where I go over them all very, very briefly. So yeah, stay tuned for those two reviews in the future, and also stay tuned for more Doctor Who book reviews at some point as well from the other series that no doubt will be released in the future. So yeah, that's it. I guess I'll see you all in another Doctor Who video at some point in the near future. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.